This should not be a school. This is just painter's principles that I'm trying to apply. Tradition is a copycat, and most people love tradition. I'm not saying, like.
They called him the voice of a generation. Bob Dylan was hailed as the prophet of the 1960s, a cultural icon whose words changed music forever. But when Joni Mitchell, one of the greatest songwriters of all time, looked at Dylan, she didn't see a genius. She saw something darker, a fraud hidden behind a mask. In her own words, Dylan was not who you think he was. Why would one of the most respected artists in history expose him like this? And what did she mean by it? To understand why Joni Mitchell's words carried such weight, you first have to understand who she was in the landscape of music. Emerging in the 1960s, Mitchell quickly became one of the most original and uncompromising artists of her time. With albums like Blue in 1971 and Court and Spark in 1974, she established herself not only as a brilliant songwriter, but as a fearless truth-teller. Mitchell never courted celebrity in the same way others did. She was known for rejecting industry games and carving out her own path, no matter how difficult. Critics often praised her as one of the most authentic voices in music, someone unwilling to hide behind masks or personas. That authenticity is what makes her comments about Dylan so striking. While most of the world celebrated him as untouchable, Mitchell saw through what she described as an illusion. In interviews, she often made it clear that honesty mattered more to her than protecting reputations. Her relationship to the broader music scene was defined by this independence. While Dylan symbolized the countercultural prophet, Mitchell represented something quieter but equally powerful, a refusal to compromise. This context helps explain why, when she spoke about Dylan, the world stopped to listen. She wasn't looking for attention, she was telling her truth, no matter the consequences. Bob Dylan's rise to fame was built not only on his songs, but also on the mythology surrounding him. He was seen as the reluctant prophet, the voice of civil rights marches, the poet who gave shape to the dreams and frustrations of an entire generation. Journalists, fans, and even fellow musicians built him up as something larger than life. But Joni Mitchell wasn't buying it. In a 2010 interview with the Los Angeles Times, she cut straight through the myth. Bob is not authentic at all. He's a plagiarist, and his name and voice are fake. Everything about Bob is a deception. The words stunned the music world. Coming from anyone else, they might have been dismissed as jealousy or bitterness. But from Joni Mitchell, whose career was defined by her artistic integrity, they hit harder. Mitchell believed Dylan's carefully crafted image distorted who he really was. She resented how the media amplified his mythology while overlooking other voices, including her own. Her sharpest criticism wasn't just about plagiarism or performance. It was about the false pedestal on which Dylan had been placed. This wasn't the language of rivalry. It was the language of someone refusing to accept what she saw as a cultural lie. And for fans who had long assumed Dylan and Mitchell were allies in music, the bluntness was shocking. The most explosive moment came when Joni Mitchell didn't just hint at her feelings about Bob Dylan. She said them out loud, on the record without apology. In multiple interviews across the 2000s and 2010s, she made remarks that stunned journalists and fans alike. One of the sharpest came in her conversation with the Los Angeles Times, where she flatly declared, "Bob is not authentic at all. He's a plagiarist." For context, Dylan's career had always been shadowed by accusations of borrowing, whether from folk traditions, old blues songs, or even literature. But Joni's claim went further. She wasn't just saying Dylan borrowed, she was calling him a fraud. At a time when many artists would have been careful not to upset one of the most revered figures in music history, Mitchell broke the silence. Her remarks crystallized a tension that had been whispered about but rarely spoken in public. The turning point wasn't just about her words, it was about the reaction. Fans who had long assumed Mitchell and Dylan shared mutual respect were left reeling. How could one legendary songwriter so openly accuse another of deception? This moment marked the beginning of a narrative that would follow both artists for years. Mitchell had drawn a line in the sand, and she wasn't going to step back from it. Once Joni Mitchell's comments were published, the reaction was swift and divided. Dylan's defenders rushed to his side, pointing out that folk and blues traditions had always involved reinterpretation. To them, Mitchell's words sounded bitter, even disrespectful, but others found themselves quietly agreeing. After all, Dylan's work had long been scrutinized for its heavy reliance on older sources. Joni had simply said what many critics had hinted at for decades. The media amplified her statements, turning them into headlines that painted Mitchell as combative. For fans who idolized both artists, it felt like watching two cultural giants stand on opposite sides of a battlefield. Even more shocking was that Mitchell didn't backtrack. In later interviews, she doubled down, criticizing not just Dylan's work, but his entire persona. She described him as hiding behind a constructed image, while she prided herself on transparency. Her bluntness escalated the tension. Instead of fading as a one-time comment, the criticism became a recurring theme. It fueled debates about authenticity in music, about myth versus reality, and about how much of an artist's persona is performance. In speaking so openly, Mitchell had done something few others dared. She pierced the aura of untouchability around Bob Dylan. And once she said it, the conversation couldn't be undone. The fallout from Joni Mitchell's remarks was intense. For decades, Bob Dylan had been placed on a cultural pedestal. He wasn't just a songwriter, he was treated as a prophet, the living symbol of an era. To many fans, questioning Dylan was almost sacrilegious. So, when Mitchell openly called him a plagiarist and a fraud, some critics accused her of jealousy. Others suggested her comments came from bitterness at not receiving the same level of recognition. Headlines framed it as a feud, a clash of titans from the golden age of songwriting. But not everyone dismissed her. Some journalists and scholars of folk music noted that Mitchell had a point. Dylan's writing often borrowed heavily from older traditions, and his chameleon-like shifts in style made him a master of reinvention, but also hard to pin down as authentic. For Mitchell, the cost was clear. Her reputation as fearless and brutally honest was reinforced, but it also made her a lightning rod for controversy. Fans who revered both artists struggled with conflicting loyalties. Should they protect Dylan's myth or respect Mitchell's courage to challenge it? The cultural conversation that followed revealed how deeply people wanted to believe in Dylan's myth, and how uncomfortable they were when that myth was cracked open. By 2024, when Mitchell once again reflected on the struggles and illusions of the music world, her honesty had taken on a new weight. Fans had seen her survive serious health challenges, return to the stage after a brain aneurysm, and remain an icon of resilience. Her refusal to bow to industry myths only strengthened her image as one of the most uncompromising voices in music. Dylan, for his part, never publicly responded in detail to Mitchell's criticisms. Perhaps that silence was its own kind of answer. While his myth remains intact for many, Mitchell's words continue to echo as a reminder that even legends are human, and that truth, however uncomfortable, has a place in the story. Looking back, Joni Mitchell's words about Bob Dylan are more than just criticism of a fellow artist. They represent a larger struggle that defined both of their careers, the tension between myth and reality. Dylan embraced masks and personas, using them to create art that transcended his own identity. He became the voice of generations precisely because he was elusive, always shifting, never allowing himself to be pinned down. Thanks for watching. Click here to check another video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.